as they come up, I'm going to begin to introduce them if you guys don't mind. And again, I'll introduce all three at the same time, and they can just kind of trade off one another. Bill Donohue is actually the president of Virginia's GENEDGE Alliance, and GENEDGE Alliance is the NIST MEP affiliate in Virginia. The company, which is in its 24th year of operations, is a Commonwealth of Virginia unit, which operates as a nonprofit consulting and technology acceleration services firm. Bill's current focus on expanding affordable services to drive strategic innovation, growth, and operational excellence throughout the value and supply chains of Virginia. Bill's very passionate about the defense supply chain industry, very passionate. So we've got some great speakers here to talk a little bit about that. Again, Bill's career began with GE Plastics and Silicones in the engineered materials business unit. Ultimately, he managed a global investment and technology program for $2.5 billion in annual revenues business. Our next speaker is Mr. Gregory Glaros, who's the CEO and founder of Synexus, Inc., which is a Virginia-based electronic system design manufacturing lead system integration company, as well as an industrial Internet of Things market leader. Some of them, again, I get the benefit of reading the bios. So as a disabled service veteran-owned small business, Synexus has been blessed by over 9 years of growth, some of which I'm sure he'll tell us about today. Before founding Synexus, Mr. Gregory Glaros served for 20 years in the U.S. Navy as a Stryker fighter pilot and qualified surface warfare officer. As a naval officer, he was a combat leader and has commanded and led combat seasoned officers and sailors in several positions and assignments. And these included 5 operational and combat tours during Desert Shield, Storm, and in Bosnia, Kosovo, and Iraq. He's a 1986 graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy. He received a Space System and Electrical Engineering Master of Sciences degree from the Navy. He's attended the Navy War College and was an Air Wing Stryker Leader graduate of the Naval Strike and Air Force War Center, Top Gun. So we're excited to have him and thank him, of course, for his service and look forward to his comments. And last but not least, of course, we have Bart Heenan. Bart is CEO and chairman and major shareholder of Morphix Technologies Incorporated, where he leads strategic direction and day-to-day operations. Bart has a 25-year career in leading large organizations and small companies. Bart started his career at GE, where he held numerous positions, including profit and loss management, strategic planning, international sales, and finance. And Bart holds a BS, a degree in finance from Virginia Polytechnical Institute, and he's a graduate of GE's financial management program and of GE's executive training program. So we're thankful to have all 3 of them with us, and I'm going to hand it over to Bill to get us started with our last panel.
Thank you, Carrie. I really appreciate it. First off, I want to thank everyone who's here today who has interest in the manufacturing extension program. What I'm going to talk specifically about is the importance of the program to the DoD supply chain. DoD is very important to Virginia, my home state. We have about 10,400 companies in the extended value chain of manufacturing, engineering, and technology. And oh, by the way, over 2,500 of them are directly involved in the DoD supply chain, 1 out of every 4. Nationally, what we found back in 2013 was the impact of sequestration, unbeknownst to the MEP system, ended up driving a large influx of business into MEPs across the nation. What we've done is we've provided a briefing paper for you all on how important that was. It's either located outside or it's in your chairs. So what we ended up finding was from a point of very little involvement across the country in DoD, we literally served almost 1,100 companies in the 2013 to 2016 region. As a matter of fact, each of those companies ended up having over 3 significant projects delivered by an MEP in their state. As a matter of fact, 48 states across the country were participating in this work. In terms of the impact and the services that were provided to these companies that in many cases were in dire straits, we were able to have reported to our independent survey house over $3.7 billion in sales growth, in investment, and in cost savings, and in bottom line impact. And most importantly, as that Great Recession continued to drag on and extend on due to the impact of sequestration in that segment or sector of businesses, we also were fortunate to help almost 23,000 people either retain their employment or actually gain new employment as those businesses became more successful. Well, why is that important? Well, I found it very intriguing when we looked at the Upjohn report earlier in the briefing today, when we talked about what's the impact of manufacturing on our local economies. So what we ended up doing is we had an opportunity to take a look at specifically what does that matter. And you know, I think there's a reason why manufacturing is in everybody's heart. And that's because we don't know how to replace it in our economies. We don't know how to replace the multiplier effect that a manufacturing business that makes things, that creates value, has on our economy. We don't know how to replace it. And that's why we find countries all over the world that have manufacturing policies that support their businesses far greater than, in fact, we do here in the United States. And I dare say many of them do not operate in a manner that even mimics a free market. Why is that important to DoD? Well, I don't know about you all. I'm a little bit of a study of history. But it seems to me that every major war has been won due to really two major things. One, the winners have had a great industrial base. And second, they've had a logistics supply chain to keep the troops fed at the front line. Think about our security. Think about our ability to be able to be the nations that is the greatest on earth without having that industrial base that's required and the logistics base to be able to defend our shores. So on the bottom of this, the back of this little sheet, we used a mechanism called an in-plan analysis. And I'm not going to claim that the in-plan analysis has anything other than an indication of the importance of the work that our MEPs did. With the companies that we worked with, there was over 209,000 employees at those sites. Over 209,000. Each site averaged about a couple hundred employees. If we look at the second round impact, in other words, how many employees were touched at the supply chains, the broad supply chains that those manufacturing plants for DoD supported, was nearly 900,000. 900,000 jobs. Now, oh, by the way, the total labor income in the supply chains that we worked with was almost $78 billion annual. And oh, by the way, their output was $314 billion. That's a significant amount of money. And finally, when we think about the fiscal impact of all of those employees, well, my goodness, at the state, local, and national level, almost $30 billion of tax revenues. Now, I'm not making any claim that our services actually directly supported those numbers, but I wanted people to have the picture of how dramatically important an industrial base is to the United States. In Virginia, oh, by the way, in the 2000s, we used to be the #1 or #2 state in the United States. And then what happened? We never recovered after the Great Recession. And why was that? It was because of sequestration. So our governor decided, you know what? We need to begin to work on the new Virginia economy. And fundamental to that was we need to diversify our great Department of Defense industrial base. Because if we don't, we're not going to be able to retain the type of growth that we have had historically. We cannot rely on the federal dollar. So as a result, we ended up partnering with the governor's office, the Office of Economic Adjustment, to begin a domestic markets diversification and expansion program in DoD supply chain companies. And I'm really privileged to have two of our great customers here today. I've got Gregory Glaros from Synexus. We've got Bart Heenan from Morphix Technologies. And without further ado, I'm going to get out of the way and let them tell you their story. Thank you.
Stand up a minute. Just stretch your legs. Darkened room, pleasant conversation. Reach your arms out a little bit. It's after lunch. All right, sit down. How many of you here are wasn't that pleasant? So, how many are staff representing members of Congress? 2. What are the rest of you guys doing? I'm serious. What do you do? What are you doing?
I'm an intern for the Alliance for American Manufacturing.
Okay.
I work for the NC Sweden
Okay.
as an innovation officer.
Okay. What are you doing?
I focus on small business and manufacturing here in the national.
So we've got a chorus of people, right? But the real folks that matter are who gets those numbers, changing the dynamics for the costs that we're doing, right? And so it's upon each of us to have a discussion with your members, in particular, to say how important this is. I mean, anyone who can provide quantitative numbers, like what's been presented today, to show the bang for the buck, it's indisputable from that standpoint. And everyone talks about small businesses and their innovation and all those things. Yet right now what vexes me is that we have these very large corporations that are multinational that sit around a round table in the White House, and yet none of us are invited to that. And that's a problem, because it's a good talk and a good game, but the fact remains is all of you and all of us are representative of what it really takes to make a difference and to hire folks. At Synexus, I've been doing what I've been doing here with my team for 11 years. We're really blessed by staying in business as a service-disabled veteran-owned small business in that we've never taken any investment money. We've never participated outside of the own profits we make and reinvested those. In one case, it's a blessing, but the fact remains, as many of you know, it requires capital in order to grow. And one of the things that GENEDGE has allowed us to do as a business, as while we've been involved in the Department of Defense for nearly 8 or 9 of those years, we saw the writing on the wall and how to diversify in what we call the industrial Internet of Things, or the commercial market. And the benefits of that have been really quite profound. Last year, our revenues were 70% defense. This year, it's 70% commercial. Very few companies survive in the defense community and swap over in order to do that kind of transition. And we're grateful for that seed capital that's provided here by GENEDGE and MEP, and the dollars that allow us to really just take a little bit more risk than we're usually willing to do. And what is it that we do? As they mentioned, I was a former strike fighter pilot. My vision was to bring the cockpit into everybody's lives. I mean, who doesn't want to be a fighter pilot? Come on. I mean, really. So I wanted to provide that kind of interface with your world. Because frankly, while we have our phones and we can look at our banking, and that's already in a digital format, the industrial sector is an analog world. Your world is an analog world. How that information gets transferred into a display or a user interface is what we do at Synexus. We design and manufacture all those electronics, all the electronic housings, all the systems, the cable, the displays, and the user interfaces, so that when you sit at a chair in an armored vehicle or in an operations center, all that information that comes off of a heavy equipment, off of individuals and their performance, off of the financial systems, off of the HVAC units, all that gets fed into, effectively, the things that we provide so you can do the analysis on it, the operations, and the decisions. Does that make sense? So we make Christmas trees for everybody else's ornaments, frankly, is what we do. The most recent things that we've been doing in a very prolific way in our investment into the commercial sector was, frankly, how do we make smart cities work? Everybody's heard the term smart cities, right? Smart grid, IoT, Internet of Things. What does it mean to you? What does it really mean? What's intelligent about those things, and how does that information get converted? Well, our company does that. The lights in Arlington, Virginia, those beautiful decorative lights that you see on the street corners, our company makes the gateway and the controllers so that we can have a little dimmer switch for thousands and thousands of those lights, so that a community or a neighborhood or a homeowner effectively says, that light's too bright. I'd like it dimmed down at certain hours. Or the police can come by and says, you know what, there's an event going on. We'd like to pump up the volume to see what was going on in that area. The result is in Arlington County, they've changed to LED lights, got about 50% savings. With our system, they get now 83% savings, energy savings with a return on investment in 3 years. It's pretty incredible. What GenEdge in particular is helping us this year is the street lights that are the Cobra heads. We're making the little yogurt cup that sits on top, so we can also do that with all the street lights that are more commodities, but more importantly, provide cameras on them, environmental sensors, carbon monoxide detectors, and anything else you can imagine as an ornament, so that we can really understand our environment and everything that goes on around it. Most recently, we've taken this defense understanding of high-end rugged electronics that gathers information like a cockpit, and we're putting that out into the mines, gold mines in Nevada. It's a really big city from the standpoint of underground and above ground, and bringing that information so that the individuals can make a decision. So we make things so that you can make a decision. And that's not trivial. It doesn't make us any more important than anybody else in this room, but the fact remains is if we don't speak about how we keep this ratio of 9 to 1 of effective dollars expended in a way that's significant for us, where's the money going to go? For what purpose? As a handout from that standpoint? Everyone wants to be worth something and build something. I think that adds value to everything that we do, and it teaches something to the next generation. The issue of the foundries and the capacity for us to manufacture is profound. And how it affects me as a business leader, the metal enclosures that host and hold our electronics, we actually make them in Canada. Why? It's aluminum. Machine parts, high-pressure cast molding, graphite cast molding. The reason is the one company I was using in Virginia went out of business. They couldn't tolerate the taxes, the regulations that go with it, and there wasn't enough throughput for them to sustain it. The other business that I used for high injection molding was in Denver, Colorado. They wouldn't accept my terms and conditions anymore because it became a state that made drugs legalized. And I will not participate in the equipment that I make that goes in the hands of soldiers and Marines and sailors that are created by a workforce that's induced by drugs. Zero tolerance. So where do I have to go? I have to go in a place that actually has the high-end technology that allows me to do it. So if any of you are in that business, I'd love to talk to you from that standpoint. But that's what it's forced me to do as a business owner in order to find the high-end competency and the price point in order for me to be competitive. At the same time, when I have gone to other companies in this country and nearby states to produce the rugged enclosures, I discovered that they were outsourcing to China. So I thought I was dealing with an American company, but only discovered later that they were doing different things, both in some of the circuit boards I made and otherwise. Well, we cut that off and brought it right back here to this country. So be wary of the true source of those things that you create, and also be understanding of these laws that want to make a lifestyle choice for somebody else is actually very detrimental to our competition as a country in doing this. So with that, look forward. If anybody has any of those machining capabilities, I'd love to talk to you from that standpoint. I have invested in the equipment to do it myself, but realize it's not really the best use of my money in order to go forward. So we can do it as a partnership and a coalition, but speak to your members of Congress here to ensure that it does. You saw me run out after Congressman Reed left here, and I hunted him down because he mentioned that he was visiting the White House this week. So I told him, ensure that we get a seat at that round table to have a discussion in earnest with the president so this becomes a priority, because if it's jobs that truly mattered and got that man elected, how do you exercise that authority? It's through us. Okay? Thanks.
Well, as the last speaker of the day, I recognize my obligation to be very concise, and I promise I will be. I'm Bart Heenan from Morphix Technology in Virginia Beach. And I'm here to talk to you about the impact that GENEDGE has had on Morphix Technology in helping us to diversify outside of the defense market and into markets that are in the industrial market and in the first responder market. We were established in 1995 in Virginia Beach. We're a small company. We develop, manufacture, and sell chemical and explosive detection devices. Our primary market has traditionally been defense. About 2/3 of our revenue has been defense. And some companies got hit a little bit by sequestration. We got hit really hard. Our little corner of the defense market got slaughtered. And what we saw is that we found 90% of our defense revenue went away in 2 years. Look, that chart on the right, well, it didn't quite print out, right? But that chart on the right is actually our defense revenue over that time period. And for a decade before that, we had a very consistent defense revenue. It fell off a cliff with sequestration. We were in trouble. We were trying to figure out how are we going to survive. So we did two things. We took a lot of very difficult near-term actions. You know, we had 60-some employees. We went down to 20-some employees. We had to. It was the only way we were going to survive. Those of us on the management team took no pay or very little pay for a long time. But we survived. We didn't only focus on the near term, though. We wanted to focus on the long term. How do we get out, or how do we get into new markets outside of defense and get into markets that we thought could be strong markets for us in the long run? And that's where GENEDGE really helped us. We started working with GENEDGE in 2014, and they've done a number of things for us. What we did is we looked at the strengths and weaknesses of our company and where we were in our current markets, and then we found gaps that we needed to fill to get to those new markets. We found gaps in 3 key areas. The knowledge of those new markets, the technology. Our technology was really strong, but it needed to be tweaked to serve some of the new markets we wanted to go after. We also had strong production capability, but again, it didn't necessarily meet the needs of the commercial market that we were going after. So GENEDGE came and helped us with all 3 of those gaps. Market research helped fix that market knowledge issue. Technology prototyping and scouting allowed us to bring new technologies in very quickly, identify them and bring them in very quickly. And production optimization helped us to figure out how to produce in a way that would be successful for the commercial market. What we've seen is a greater than 25%, it's actually closer to 40% increase in non-defense revenue in the past 2 years. That hasn't gotten us back to where we were, before our problems. But it's gotten us to where we're no longer worried about the survival of the company day to day. We know we're going to be in business, and we're on a path to continue to grow. GENEDGE has played a key role in helping us to do that. So I really do want to thank Bill and the GENEDGE team for their help.